Okay, the waiting room is empty, so we are going to start. I first of all want to welcome all of you to our AM 101 for the first day of September. Wanted to remind everybody that this session will be recorded and it'll be archived on our YouTube channel. Everyone who registered for the event will get a follow-up email from me, and it will have a link to the YouTube channel, as well as any meeting materials that Julissa wants to share with us. Please remember to keep your microphone muted, and questions will go in the chat. Julissa, periodically, if you can just pause, I'll get the questions out to you, or you can monitor the chat if you want, but it might be easier to just let me manage the questions. And then with that, I'd like to introduce Julissa Gomez. She's our Member Mobilization Director, and she's going to tell you everything you ever wanted to know about the REALTOR Action Fund. Julissa.
Well, thanks, Peggy. I'm not sure of everything about REALTOR Action Fund, but I'll cover a good chunk of it. And then I'll do a quick fundraising kind of 101 for everybody, and then making sure that kind of people a little bit understand that. And then I'll do the mechanics of RAF, if that's okay. I think that having some foundation on fundraising might be helpful as to what myself and our team for RAF can kind of help to establish a culture of fundraising. So with that, I will take it away and share my screen, and I'm going to let everybody know that I'm down to a laptop computer screen, so it might be a little clunky, so just bear with me, and I apologize in advance about that. But okay, and can you see my screen? Yes, right? And then I am going to do this. There we go. Okay, cool. Awesome. So I think everybody can see my screen, if I'm not mistaken. If I can get, I can't see a head nod, so if I can get a verbal from you. Oh, perfect. Thank you, Peggy. Perfect. Appreciate it. All right. So I'm going to play a quick video on this. This is just kind of, and then we'll kind of hopefully monitor the chat, but I'm trying to make this as interactive as possible. So, with that said, when I ask a question, if you can kind of just populate your answers in the chat, and I'll take a peek in there as well to try to stimulate some engagement in the videos and try to keep the conversation going to the best of my ability. It's hard on Zoom. In a normal setting, I would just ask people to raise their hand and popcorn this, but let's play around with this training this way. Here we go. Alrighty. Whoops. Alrighty. So with that said, so just some initial thoughts from everybody, like what did they think? I know I had some initial thoughts on wondering like what, how does this relate to our members? So if anybody can just kind of popcorn some answers in the chat, that would be great. Appreciate that. And I have my chat open, so hopefully we can all see that. Oh. So if anybody wants to write in the chat what their initial thoughts on the video was or what they think, and we'll go ahead and I know what that relates to the industry, and we'll take it from there. So I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to respond. Great. Yeah, definitely potential for burnout. Everything changes as we do our business. And then it's surprising how much social media was used today, even 5 years ago. Yes. And so in that regard too, everything about AI and how we are targeted as consumers, and that goes for, our members as well, right? So how do you break through that noise? There's so much happening, and that's kind of what I want to talk about when we talk about creating a fundraising culture, right? It just not takes one person or it doesn't take a group of people. It takes really everybody, because there is so much happening in the speed. We really need everybody to really get engaged in this process. And so for me, I know that, sometimes, especially for contribution, it's very political. It's tied to, what CREPAC does. It's tied to who we give to candidates. But, at the heart of it, RAF is really there to protect members in the industry, to ensure that they have a voice politically, right? And so when I talk about RAF, I talk about it from that perspective. I talk about it from a very local perspective of how it's happening in the local level. Is it a sign ordinance? Is it a point of sale that's happening? Is it another issue that's really relevant that you can point to for a member, and how, impact or making sure that we had certain candidates elected to the city council or to the water board or to the school board that made an impact, right? Like that's how finite it needs to be. And so I really, really challenge all of you to think about local issues. As much as the state stuff, it can be exciting. For some of our members, it's really comes down to, is there a parcel tax that's happening, and how, your local association got involved in what it did. So the best of your ability of honing it back to locally, it's really important. And, that's why for me, when I talk about it, I try to get local associations in any campaign that we do, whether it be an email campaign, or some of them have requested to do texting campaigns, and we're still exploring that, just so all of you know, or other ways. It's having a local voice is so important of how to do that. So just continuing on, I'm sorry. Okay. So why is fundraising so important? Like I said, it's just not something else you do. It's really about really participating, right? So you want everyone to feel engaged as a whole. And that's really from everybody as well on your staff, making sure they understand what RAF is, what it does, where it goes, so having all of your staff to have a 30-second spiel on it is super important, because again, we're trying to create a peer culture of fundraising. We're trying to create something where, and you'll see why, and I'll get into a little bit why that is so crucial, that everybody really understands who and what RAF does, right? And so, sorry, I keep getting the pop-ups. Everyone on staff is super critical for this mission, and not just, it's not just one group. It's not just one, LCRC or the RAF committee, but the entire membership that is really engaged in the association world at your local association should really have a 30-second spiel of what RAF does. What does it mean to them? Why do they contribute? Why did they really believe in RAF. And those are the reasons why that become really important, right? So when I give to a local charity, or when I give politically to a candidate, it becomes like, you know, my friend told me about it, or someone else told me about it, and then I get a pop-up email, and then I get like a Facebook ad, right? So it follows me, right? And so it's not just one conversation, it's not just one email that I got, it's a constant thing where I can then see that there is a path for me to say, okay, let me take a minute to see what this is about. And then, you know, why do I want to contribute? And so those are the reasons why I think it's so important to create that culture. And just some quick tips about like why you want to be creating that, you know, and one of the things is training, right? So going back to that same group over and over again, making sure that they refine their 30-second spiel. Do they have a 1 minute speech of what RAF is? Why are they giving? And so that's really, really important, so that you keep giving members the opportunity to really deliver that message themselves, you know, over and over again. Oftentimes I see, you know, it's, you know, the few members, and then it doesn't go out of that box, right? So you really want to create that it's all of the members really talking about it, because then they themselves have a different network of members that they speak to, and so that they can mention it, right? So giving those opportunities is also really important, so that they, you know, and it doesn't have to be that, like I said, this elaborate thing of like, okay, let's spend an hour about talking about fundraising 101. I mean, who really wants to do that? I do fundraising, and it's not, you know, I wouldn't want to sit through that. So it's really important just to like take, you know, 10-15 minutes about it, talk about it. You know, do all of you have your, what is that one thing that's going to hook members in when they're doing their elevator speech, you know, the 30-second speech? What is that one thing that's going to hook everybody in? And then you can go into the mechanics, because let me just tell you the mechanics of like, oh, it helps for this. It does, you know, dual agency, it preserves dual agency at the state level, stuff of that nature. That's not really going to compel a member to contribute. You know, they want to hear how it happened locally. You know, did you know at our local association, we were facing a parcel tax last year, and we were able to make an investment and participate in the campaign to defeat this proposition. And that is through the RAF dues, right? So it's a story. It's a compelling story where there's definitely some actors that play a part of it, and it's your local association. So I really challenge all of you to, when you're speaking to your members and asking them, like, do they have that 30-second spiel, that it is a story, that they are doing something that's very compelling rather than the, you know, our typical. And, you know, we are at RAF, we do try to do things in the generic manner, because we have to, because we do want all of the local associations to be able to participate, but we also customize things a lot. So if you do have local issues that you want to include in some of our materials and our flyers and stuff like that, please let us know. And then we can do that to create more of a compelling story for all of you in those materials. So I wanted to make sure that you all knew that as well. So why is it, again, it's, you know, I think for me, and I'll pause after this slide, Peggy. For me, in fundraising, one of the things I was always, you know, from early on in my career was always like, oh, it's a pyramid, right? It's a pyramid. So you have all your donors at the potential people at the bottom, and then it moves up. So then you have those that make one-time contribution, and then those that are more, you know, more of a one-time contribution, and then moves up a level so that they're more continuous donors, and then it moves up to major gifts, and then it moves up to bequests, right? So then you get to major gifts up all the way at the top. Well, I think that has really changed in the industry within the last 15 years, and a lot of it has to do with what that video was showing, is that with the way that even consumers are being targeted with AI and other things, you know, that has really, really changed the way people come in as donors, where people come in as investors and contributors. So that has really changed the industry significantly within the last 20 years. So one of the things that I am putting up on the screen, hopefully y'all can see that, is the vortex of engagement, right? So it is the individual that comes in, but as that individual enters this vortex, so to speak, you know, it's going to be the peer, it's going to be communication. So the things that the member can find out information from about RAF at any point as they walk through the path of being a member, right? So it's super critical that you are constantly like informing that member of what RAF is. It's not just a one-time email and then they're going to contribute, right? Because then they had a conversation with a local association director. They got an email, they saw something in the newsletter. So it's constantly being in their face, because that's how it takes to kind of break through the noise, right? So, and the other thing is that engagement really, if you look at it, the first thing is that peer influence. I can't stress that enough. One of the things, and I'm as a consumer myself, or as a potential donor to other charities and to PACs as well, one of the ways that I get involved in places and with things is through my peers, right? So my people who I have in my circle who are alike like me, that think like me, that have the same values as me. So I assume, and again, I assume that they've already done some of that initial, or it's coming from a trusted source that I can then say, okay, this is something I want to go down the path of engaging in, right? And then, you get those communications. So I just want to make sure that you all understand that it's super critical, that peer-to-peer conversations. And again, the other thing is that to be very transparent, I know, and to tackle the tough questions, I think, sometimes we want to create those generic messaging and say, what does RAF do? Preserve dual agency, point of sale, things of that nature. But, we do have to go in there and be transparent. The average member is way more savvier and way more connected to what's happening politically and what's happening locally. So I think it's super critical that you do be aware that you want to tackle those tough questions, be upfront, have those conversations and lead those conversation. If you're reacting to the members' questions about, for example, with the CREPAC thing, was a clear example, right? We want to be out front. We want to create that this is why we did it and this is our statement, rather than reacting to it as much as we can. And that's really important, as your local associations make those tough decisions, like being very cognizant that the member is going to know about it. So how do you have that tough conversation and being transparent with that? And Peggy, I don't know if there's any questions in the chat.
There are none right now. You're being really thorough. Thank you.
Okay. And I'm trying not to speak so fast, so I apologize. All right. How to connect to members. So one of the things that I would say that this is really important, right? Because one of the things is you want to create that statement or that engagement level, and you want to talk about like, what's the problem? What is the cause, right? So for example, I keep going to the parcel tax. That's the problem, right? And that's the cause. So you want to be able to define the problem or define the local issue as to the best of your ability to really make it seem like it's a dark thing and that we need to solve it. As realtors, RAF is going to solve that, or we already solved that. And that's why we need you, right? We need you. Members want, and for general fundraising 101, one of the things is that people want to contribute or want to give, and they want to know that their dollars are going to something to solve an issue, to solve a problem, that they're giving a piece to make things better, that they're going to improve, that their dollars are going to improve somebody's life, that they're going to make an impact, right? And so that's the next thing, right? The importance of the cause, right? What is going to how important is that cause? Why is it important for their business? Why do you need them to get involved? And the other thing is credibility, right? So again, I mean, the Realtor brand is credible to a lot of our members, and especially at the local level, we've seen that through tons of our survey data, that the local level, especially all of you, the member connects with you. So that is super important. That goes back also to the transparency. So you already have credibility with that, keep that going. And the other thing is that again, this goes back to the impact, right? They want to know that their dollars are going to something that's going to make an impact on that problem and that cause and why you need them. So making those connections is really important. And that's how you really hopefully will turn a prospector, what we call prospectors, into a donor. So those members that are not giving are hopefully going to become at least a one-time, and then, you know, keeping that one member that gave that one time into a continuous giver or contributor is, you know, it is a challenge. That is one of the biggest challenges I think that we face. I think we're able to turn around new members, but how do we continuously give them? And so that's one of the challenges that I think we face. And so that one I'll say for RAF 101.2, we could talk about just reoccurring donors or reoccurring contributors, and how do we change them to be more like lifetime contributors. So that's something that I think is on the horizon, and that's something that I would like to speak to Peggy about, maybe doing a quick 30-minute training on that. And I think that might be fruitful for all of you. But I would really, when you talk about this with your own members and your own trainings that you do, or your own communication, is like really lay out the problem early on, lay it out so that members can connect to that problem. And then again, that they want to be able to see the path of why their dollars are so important to fixing this issue. All right, now we'll get into the more RAF nitty gritty, so to speak. All of you are familiar with RAA and the RAF Flow Chart, I hope, at this point. But if not, you know, this will be a quick refresher. I think last year was the first year that all of you know our assessment went from 49 to 69. So that's reflective in this slide. What we ended up doing was, as you guys remember, we simplified the packs, and so that's why it's 69. Of that 69, $22 goes in for program costs. So we kind of streamlined a lot of the program costs, and so that's why that went up. So just a heads up on that. And then on the RAF side, this is where I wanted to just make sure all of you understood this, because there's been a lot of conversation or chatter about this recently. So I want to make sure that all of you understand that. So when a member gives to RAF, the first, from the $1 that they give to up to 200, that portion of it gets split into CREPAC Federal at 70%, and then the other 30% goes into your LCRC account, and then the subs accounts, so LCRC, Impact, and ALF, depending on your own splits. Excuse me. Take a sip of coffee. So this has nothing to do with the portion of the RAA that you receive based on participation level. I hope that makes sense. So on the RAF side, again, when a member gives $49 or up to $200, that's the way the split happens. Anything over $200, up to, like, let's say a member gives $10,000, from 201 to 10,000, let's say, all that money gets put into CREPAC Federal. So that's kind of how the work is. Now, this portion, our CREPAC Federal, then takes care of our needs assessment, or some of you know that as needs meets goal with NAR. So that's how that flow is. That then we from CREPAC Federal meet our goal with NAR, and then we provide that. So we have, so we are also under the RAF umbrella doing RPAC fundraisers. I think that was something else that's come up a lot of times. It's like, you know, for core standards, does RAF meet the standards? And yes, it does. So if you're doing anything related to fundraising for RAF, that should be fine and under your core standards. And then this is kind of like a little bit more of how the sub-account or the RAF is then tied to your participation. And I think that this is where a lot of times the local associations, and we try to do our best to work with all of you so that you meet goal for the association, so you can get the 32% or the 35% if you're 5% above the goal for that year. So that's critical for all of you to understand. So that's the RAA portion that goes into it. So, which is different from the RAF. Peggy, any questions on that? I know that can be a little tricky. And mind you, this has been simplified at this point. So I don't even know what else to say about that. Okay, this is where, going back to all of you, that you've all seen this, we put this out on a consistent basis for all of you. It's our RAF Participation Matrix, and this is how you find out, like, okay, how many extra contributors do I need or members do I need, participants do I need to meet the RAF goal, or just to hit 12%, and that's what that is. And we try to work our best with our local associations. We want all of you to at least hit 12% so that all of you can get at least that portion of the RAA, which is the minimum, I think it's 30. So just making sure that all of you at least hit the 12% and above there.
Lisa, we do have a question now.
Sure.
Tracy would like to know when that report is provided.
Yeah, absolutely. This report goes on our website and we update it. We try to update it on a monthly basis. And I will give you all the direct link in my follow-up email to Peggy. I will make sure that that link to this report is there, and then you all can pin it and making sure that you know how to get there to that path of this report. Dues billing. So that's not to, you know, as much as I talked about creating a fundraising culture, you know, one of the ways that we really do raise a lot of RAF funds, as all of you are familiar with, it's through our dues billing process, and that's coming up around the bend. So I just wanted to make some notes on that for all of you. We do an annual audit for all of you to ensure that RAF is above the line, and that is either 49 and or 148. So we work with all of you to also make sure you have all the legal disclosures and all of that, and that will be happening. I know Keesman is going to be doing, I think he's going to be doing his annual dues billing webinar, and he includes our stuff in there related to the dues billing audit that we conduct. So I'm just going to make sure that all of you make that note for all of you as an FYI, but then he goes down into the path of that. So I'm not going to get down too much in there, but that's kind of like the window more or less. And this changes on a yearly basis, but we try to get all of you to submit your dues billing statements so that we can review it. And that includes the online portals as well. The other thing is, I think all of you already know this, but just a refresher for those of you who are new as well, is that we do have a lot of materials. That's one of the things we love to do, is create materials for all of you. And then this is our dues billing insert. Like I said, if you all want to include here on your right-hand side, I mean, we put in there, you know, statewide service taxes, dual agency, preserving mortgage interest deduction, things of that nature, that we can definitely change that if you have some local issues that you want to put in there. So just let us know. The other thing that I did want to make sure all of you knew is that, you know, I think, and maybe that's for another, and I can share that slide, is we have done some survey on our members related to political issues, and maybe that's something that can be talked about later on in the future, and some of the issues that members feel more passionately around that. So one of them is a mortgage interest deduction. And so making sure we always try to include that in there. And that's the reason why independent contractor, anything with independent contractor status, is also really popular with members. They love to see that. So those are some of the issues. You know, these other ones are not as popular. I think people, the point of sale one, surprisingly, I think a lot of members didn't quite understand that. So that didn't rank up as high as one of the issues that they cared about. But nonetheless, well, maybe in the later future, I can share that with all of you, that data. And so that would be interesting in how you relate that to your own fundraising materials that you then develop later on. Let me skip this slide. Okay, fundraising. So depending on, you know, we try to develop activities revolving around kind of like a timeline for folks that really works best with the members based on, like, you know, of years of experience and related to what's happening at the association level, right? So November through February is kind of when dues billing is happening as well. And so we really encourage all of you to do some type of sweepstakes related with dues billing. And a number of local associations have done that. So we have a lot of ideas around that. So we have a lot of templates already established. That's one thing. The other thing, and this is way harder in a virtual environment, but it's an office to office. I know a couple years back, some local associations have an RAF committee level. And so they would divide the offices up and making sure that they got an opportunity to speak at the various offices within their local association jurisdiction and talk about it. So that was our office to office contest. Those have been really, really popular, and they do have a high success rate. So kind of that's something that you might want to consider doing in November and February. And then you can tie it with the dues billing, right? So making sure people understand that they'll see it on the dues billing, and that's when they want to be contributing to RAF. And then the second thing that I wanted to make sure that you all knew about the timeline purposes is February to May is usually around the time that Ledge Day, or at least March through May, is Ledge Day is about to happen, and people are really tuned into that. We can't stress how many members have said how impactful Ledge Day is for them. And so with that said, is we try our best to try to encourage local associations to, again, tie their fundraising to Ledge Day, right? So we do a lot of Ledge Day contests around that time. We have tons of materials on that as well. So all of you can really hone in on that. We have many examples, so just let us know. And then the latter months with May through August is when we encourage you to do in-person, or in this case, virtual fundraisers, and looking at ways to engage there. You could also tie it into, we did a couple of things called like add-on fundraisers. So if you have an existing event, let's say it's an existing event and you wanted though to have some RAF stuff there and provide something. So we have these add-on fundraisers where you can do something in I say in the front or in the back, so to speak, and kind of have a table, but that so that you can tackle on some additional things into your existing meetings and events that you already do, and then just add an RAF component. So we do have the capability of that. As all of you know, everything must be approved by Lisa. I always make my standard joke, and I'll put it in here. I don't look good in orange. None of us look good in orange. And so making sure that all of you apply ensures that we are following our legal compliance and our legal compliance with both in council and outside counsel. As all of you know, we do work with outside counsel as well to ensure that everything that we do for our fundraising is up to par. Unlike other states and other places that do fundraising, you know, we also have FPC, which is another body that regulates political fundraising in California. So we have an extra layer of what we're limited to do and what we're not limited to do. As you all know, we do sweepstakes, for example. We don't do raffles. We don't do auctions here in California. Those are really highly complicated, so we can't do that. There is no such thing as in-kind contributions in California. Everything is reportable. Anything is reportable. So, so we have a lot more different stringent requirements that we much obliged to. So that's why we ask all of you to really follow our guidelines so that we can make sure that we're staying up to legal compliance there.
Julissa, can I just interject with a quick question?
Sure.
Judy had a good question, and she wants to know when the deadline is to meet the RAF goals for each association.
Yeah, absolutely. So the goals are, yes, sorry about that. So yeah, we close out our year, so to speak, like in October. And that's also when our payment plans, or anybody who major donors who are in September, just so you know. But then we kind of close down the giving or contributing, in around October, November for the year. And then that's kind of when the deadline is for all of you.
Thanks, Julissa. And she also has a second question and wants to know if you could define sweepstakes versus raffle.
Absolutely. So for all intents and purposes, again, we don't do a raffle in political fundraising. And the reason why it's a sweepstakes is that because, and there's a lot, if you look at, for example, this dues billing contest one, let me pull up a sweepstakes one too, while we're talking. let me see. I don't want to jump too much around there, but and I'll get to it. But if you look at the legal disclosures, the sweepstakes kind of makes it seem, or it does make it seem, that you don't need a particular, any members can contribute, so they don't, the odds of winning are different. So basically the odds of winning, and it's not like you're forced into having to do this, number one, and number two, the odds of winning are different, right? So that's one of the requirements that we have to do. So it's a little tricky, but basically you don't need to contribute to RAF to participate in the sweepstakes if you still wanted to. And that's kind of one of the things in the legal requirements that we have to say in there. And in a raffle, if you will, you have to buy a ticket, so to speak, to get into the raffle. Here, it's a sweepstakes, right? You're making a contribution, but you're not buying a ticket. I hope that makes sense. That's kind of like the finite, more defined rule. We're not buying a ticket. That makes sense, hopefully. And then in California, all raffles are regulated by the California Attorney General, and so you have to file for a raffle permit to hold any type of raffle. So that's why also we hold sweepstakes for political fundraising. That makes sense, hopefully. And these are just some examples I did want to say about the dues billing or any application that we work on. And we are available, obviously, to help all of you if you wanted to do a gift card. But one of the things that we like to ensure is that you're not spending more money than you're bringing in, right? That's really critical for us. We want to ensure that the prizes and what you're going to spend in terms of your costs for fundraising are low cost, number one, and number two, that they're also within the budget, and meaning that you're definitely going to be able to bring in way more than you anticipate to spend. I hope that made sense there. And so all of the things that we do have budgets and have a application that all of you submit, then we work with our legal counsel to get those all approved, and then we create all the materials for all of you. That includes all our legal disclosure, that includes all of that information, so that all you have to do is really just market it to your members to make sure that they are ready to go and they understand when the deadlines are, like when the sweepstakes starts or contest starts, and when it ends, and by when they need to contribute to RAF to make an impact. And then the other thing is, I did want to, this is harder to do in a digital environment, and we've been thinking of ways to create it in a digital environment for all of you. But, you know, making sure that all of you, when you set your RAA, when you set your goal for your own local association, that is up there and people see a visual that we're so close. And that's another way to get members to contribute, right? So people want to know, like, are we close to it? So if you are very close and you need 10 more members, you know, help us reach our goal of, you know, X number percentage or 35%. So can you contribute the $20 to get us over the edge, right? So that's also a good end of the year fundraiser as you're getting close to closing out the year and trying to hit up those other last minute contributors and trying to get them, see if we could get some dollars in from that.
Lisa, before you move on, Tiffany has a question. She was wondering if there are any links on CAR.org that explain the legal requirements specific to California.
No, there is not. But I can, if you all are interested, I can send that to you in terms of, it varies from activity to activity. And that's the reason why we don't put anything up there. For example, like I mentioned, auctions don't work in California because the stringent requirements for that are highly complicated. So we just don't do them, versus a sweepstakes, right? We are able to do that. So other types of activities. So the legal disclosures change and vary for each activity that we do as well. So it's not like, that's why we, again, ask all of you to submit these applications, because they vary and they change. So I can't give you, we don't provide you with like templated legal language that you can then just put on everything. So it changes and it varies from activity that you do. I hope that answers your question as to why we don't put it up there. Cool. The other thing I really wanted to talk to you all about was email campaigns. One of the things that I wanted to put in there is obviously people are very in tune, and it goes back to some of the things that we talked about earlier on. People are super in tuned as to what's happening in their communities, right? So the best that you can do to grab and talk about what's currently happening. How can you latch on to what's been popular already? How do you draw in from a headline like this and try to make an email campaign or your own newsletter and relate it back to RAF? And that's hard to do. I'm not saying it's very easy to do, but you know, what's happening in your local community? What headlines are members talking about so that you can then tie it back to RAF is really critical, because I think the other thing is people want to know, people are already looking out for things of that nature. And so that's going to be an eye-catching thing. And then they're more likely to stay on the page a little longer. They're more likely to read that email a little longer. So, you know, that's really critical in how you set up your email campaigns. I know that that's something that I try to work with the local associations and with Lisa to remind everybody to do that. You know, sometimes if there is a local, you know, something happening on, again, I go back to a parcel tax, and there's tons of headlines around that, or there's a supply issue, you know, how can you relate it back to RAF? And we do our best to work with all of you to try to do that. And we do tons of email campaigns. We have that all set up for all of you. This is like a paper version, but obviously it would be done through an email. We create all the links as well. One of the cool things about Aristotle, the software that we use, is that when a member then clicks on any of these links to contribute, they don't need to enter their NERDS ID. It's unique to it's already embedded in that. So people just kind of click there and they're able to right away make their contribution. So we also try to streamline the process of contributing, and so that it's very easy to do. One of the things we also encourage when we do these email campaigns is not to list all the levels, right? Just to do a $20 one or a $49, and that's it, not to include all the other levels. And one of the things is that it can be very daunting. It's like, oh my gosh, wait, there's a $5,000 level, I don't know, and people get kind of already lost. So we try to make the easy recommendation is always to put just like $20, and some associations want to do 20 and 49, and it kind of doesn't go beyond that. And we try to keep it just at 2 levels. Now, if you are doing a more targeted campaign, which you can do, like let's say we wanted to target those that are the 149 givers or contributors, and then you want to move them up to silver bears, right? So those that have been giving 149 for the last 5 years, you do a more targeted campaign, and then you might want to do a silver bear and then the golden R or sterling R. Then you can list those out, but my recommendation is just for more those that are not contributors, just to keep it at 20 and 49. The other thing is thanks, right? Recognition. I highly encourage you to send out a year-end email or some type of recap of what their impact went for the year, thanking them. What were you able to accomplish that year thanks to that member's contributions? That just keeps them going, keeps them engaged. And then also to remind them, hey, dues billing, PS dues billing is coming up. Please continue to contribute to RAF, right? So that's something you want to do. And that kind of goes into the recognition piece of it. And helps to maintain donors at various different levels. People want to be thanked. People want to know that they are being recognized for their events. With that, I did want to say that we do have all of you, obviously, I just talked about recognition from an email perspective, and I know in a virtual environment, again, it's harder to do, but if you are doing in-person stuff, you wanted to recognize all your RAF contributors and have a special reception for them. You are able to do that, but we do have some policies regarding around that, and it's basically we want to make sure that the costs are within 10% for the year that was raised from the previous calendar year, and that can be a little confusing, so I'm happy to let you know the set amount that you have, and then that's kind of what you can use throughout the year as well. So if you wanted to do your recognition at the end of the year, or the beginning of the year, you wanted to spread it out, do a couple of smaller ones, you can as well, but that's kind of it. And so, you know, certificates, special Zoom backgrounds, things of that nature are a great way to get people to feel like their dollars went and hit them over the edge, or their dollars are appreciated, things of that nature. So people really enjoyed that. Members enjoyed that as well. And yeah, the other thing was a public recognition. Again, this is harder to do. This is really popular with a lot of the local associations. They print all the local association contributors or major donors, and they put up a sign, and people loved looking for their name. And I can't tell you, we did that once at the RAF booth, and I literally saw people looking for their name there. So people really enjoyed that. We've gotten, and I'm just going to do this really quick because I know it's 10:50, so I did want to make sure that I end 5 minutes for all of you to ask any final questions and all that. But social media guidelines. So we do have some guidelines regarding social media. A lot of local associations I know are all over the internet and Facebook, and we talked about this earlier. That's like one of the main ways people communicate, receive information. And so we do try to make sure that we create some guidelines for all of you to be able to do that. And that is, and again, there's a lot of election laws that prohibit us really from doing that. But one of the things that we want to do is really just keep it very non-solicitable. We want to keep it very generic, just generally talking about RAF, but not making it all any solicitations. Just keeping it just general information and education is really what you can do. And there's and we have like a nitty gritty FAQ on this, if you will, or guidelines of like what is an actual solicitation, what is not a solicitation, what can you put in there. Again, it's like general information, general activities, or information out linking to a calendar of events that you're doing, and RAF events as well. You can do that. So this is kind of in there, and I invite all of you to go ahead and take a look at that. That's really critical for all of you, because you can still promote, like I said, you can still promote. You have an RAF event coming up on social media, but you can't make a solicitation, right? So that's kind of like and there's a fine line there as to what you can do. So a lot of times if you are going to do an in-person event, or you are promoting a contest on social media, we'll work with you to kind of do some pre-approved social media posts so you can have that. And it also makes it easier for all of you, because then you could just kind of copy and paste and put it out there, put it on Hootsuite or whatever platform that you use to schedule posts, and then it's ready to go, and then you don't have to worry about it too much. But you can do social media. We just have a lot of parameters from that. So I don't necessarily want all of you to shy away from doing it, but just know that it can be done. It's just we're again mindful of all of that, making sure that we follow the law there. Again, all of you can visit raf.car.org. We put an annual toolkit out it's a pretty extensive book in there, and it can be quite daunting. With all of this information, I invite all of you to take a look at it, flip through it. It's kind of like a flip book too, so it's kind of cute. And you can take a look at it and find some resources there. And again, me and Lisa are more than available to kind of go down the path for all of you. And kind of, if you wanted to set out a timeline of events that you wanted to do with your committees out for the entire year, please let us know. We are more than happy to help you out with all of that. Or if you want to do a one-off fundraiser, because you're very close and you need only 15 more contributors, we're happy to do that as well. Okay. And that's kind of it for me, Peggy. I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and it's 10:53 on my end.
There's no more questions in the chat, but if anybody has any questions for Julissa, now's your chance. Go ahead and unmute and ask your question.
Wow, you are all a very quiet bunch. Maybe you all need it.
I think that was a lot of information. Probably getting the slide deck will probably be helpful.
Yeah, I will definitely send that to you, Peggy. And I was trying to fly through it. I know it was a lot of information. And I just think like the more information I could put in front of you, the better. Maybe it'll entice you to contact me or Lisa, and then you can all give me a call later, and I'm more than happy to walk you through any particular piece of it.
Well, thank you, Julissa. That was really informative, a ton of information. And for everybody on the call, you will be getting a follow-up email with links and slides and all that so that you'll have something to refer back to. Thanks, everybody, for attending. And Julissa, thank you for all of that information.
Thank you, Peggy, for inviting me. It was a pleasure to be here with all of you.